So welcome back to Excelsior Academy. In the previous lectures, we have talked about the lipid composition, different types of phospholipids, right? And the role of cholesterol and phospholipids in maintaining the fluidity of the membrane. Now, in this lecture, we are going to talk about the membrane proteins. So what are the different types of membrane proteins we have over here? So in the fluid mosaic model, when we have seen, there was two types two types of proteins. Mainly two types of proteins were there. Those were peripheral proteins like this and the integral proteins. Now what do you mean by integral proteins? They are the proteins, they are having the hydrophobic core. Now since they have got the hydrophobic core, they will pass through the plasma membrane. Okay, so it means that this portion of your integral membrane protein has got the hydrophobic amino acids. Then we have the peripheral proteins. Now peripheral proteins means they are going to be water soluble. Either they are present on the extracellular matrix or inside the cytoplasm. Okay, now they are loosely associated with either the integral proteins or the to your to your phospholipids itself. So different types are there, which we are going to see now. Now integral proteins are also called the transmembrane proteins, which span the bilayer. Now span the bilayer means they are going to cross the plasma membrane. So like this, in few textbook, it will be given like this, where you have got the N terminal, C terminal of the protein. Sometimes N terminal this side, C terminal this side, or you can have N terminal over here and C terminal over here. Okay. So depending on the protein function, you can have the different structures or different spanning of the bilayer. Lipid anchored proteins are tethered to leaflet by a long covalently attached hydrocarbon chain. So this means what? This we are talking about over here. So it is a protein which is attached to the lipid. Now over here interaction is going to be the covalent. Whereas in this case it is the hydrophobic of the integral with the phospholipids, whereas peripheral it is having the ionic. Okay. Now, in the case of lipid anchor, it means what? To one of your phospholipids, the protein is being attached. Peripheral proteins associate with the membrane primarily by specific non-covalent interactions with integral or membrane lipids. So, these are your peripheral proteins. So, they can be present in the extracellular or cytosol. Membrane-associated proteins, including the cytoskeleton, extracellular matrix animal cells, and cell wall in plant and bacterial cells. So, here they are talking about the membrane associated protein. So what does it mean? So here we have got the integral and the peripheral as your membrane associated, because they are directly attached to your membrane. To this, your cytoskeleton proteins are attached. So what are the examples of cytoskeleton? There are three types of cytoskeleton proteins. What are those?
Actin,
Yes. And
actin and intermediate filaments and
yes.
microtubule.
Yes, microtubules, correct. Very good. So directly which is associated to many of these peripheral proteins are the actin. Okay. So now if I ask which one is present in more concentration, so what will be your answer? Actin, IF or MT? Which one? Any idea?
Actin.
Yes, it
Actin.
is the actin. So actin actually covers the entire your cell. So everywhere it is actually like the road or the highway which is formed over here. So entire cell structure or the architecture of the cell is maintained by the actin filaments. Okay. Yes. Now let's talk about these proteins in detail now. So integral proteins, they're also called the transmembrane proteins. They have got the three segments. So what are those three segments? Of course, the cytosolic part, the exoplasmic part, and the membrane spanning part. Right. So if suppose this is your plasma membrane, then we have got the membrane spanning part or your the, so one portion is going to be facing your cytosol, the other portion is going to facing your extracellular, and the third segment is around your membrane spanning domain. Okay, so now mainly most of your transmembrane proteins are alpha helices. in the phospholipid layer. Okay, there are only few proteins which also have beta sheets forming the forming the phospholipid portion. So that example exceptions are porins. So they have got the beta sheets, hydrophobic beta sheets. Otherwise, in most of the cases, the proteins are always, these portions are always alpha helices. Okay. Yes. Now, lipid anchor membrane proteins, they are bound to the lipids with the help of the covalent bond. Now, the hydrophobic carbon chain of the attached lipid is embedded in one of the leaflet of the membrane and anchors the protein to the membrane. So, it can be your PS or PE. So, any of the 5 phospholipids, it can be present. Okay. Now, the polypeptide chain itself does not enter the phospholipid layer. Why? Because over there, the protein is going to be your water soluble. Now, when I say water soluble, it means it is going to be your peripheral proteins facing the exoplasmic or the cytosolic side of the plasma membrane. Okay, just stop me in between if you are not understanding any portion. These are very simple ones. Then the peripheral proteins. So they are bound to the membrane indirectly by interactions. So either they are interacted with the integral membrane proteins or with the lipid head groups. Now why lipid head groups? Because it is having the phosphate group, right? So again, they can have the ionic interactions over there. So these peripheral proteins are localized either to the cytosol or to the exoplasmic face of the plasma membrane. Now, these are the few examples over here. So first example, what we are going to discuss is the glycophorin A. Now, have you heard of glycophorin A somewhere else? It is very important protein actually.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, where?
Integral proteins. Integral proteins.
Oh, yes, it is an integral protein, but what is its importance?
RBC.
Yes,
No,
it is
ma'am.
present in the RBC again.
Yes, ma'am.
Still, what is its importance? Okay, so the importance is that glycophorin A is responsible for your malarial entry, malarial parasite entry. So on the RBC, glycophorins A to E is there, glycophorin A, B, C, D, E. So there are 5 different types of glycophorin A and glycophorins are present. And this malarial parasite, the plasmodium, it actually interacts with this glycophorin and enters the RBC where it completes its life cycle. Okay. So if a person is having any form of mutant in the glycophorins, then that person becomes resistant to malaria. Okay. So such mutants are also available. It is called Dantu mutant. It is called Dantu mutant. Just see the spelling over here. It is called the Dantu mutant. Okay. So we'll come to the glycophorins again with respect to malaria. Just remember for time being now that if you are talking about a malarial resistant RBC, then it is the Dantu. Okay. Now, glycophorin A is a major protein in the RBC. So it is a single pass transmembrane protein and have alpha helices. So you can see over here, N terminal is at the extracellular side and C terminal is at the cytosolic side. Okay. And then you have the alpha helices spanning the membrane. Now, the hydrophobic side chains protrude outward from the helix and form van der Waals interactions with the fatty acyl chains in the bilayer. So what it is saying is that whatever hydrophobic amino acids are present, it is facing towards the phospholipids, which makes sense, right? Because those are also hydrophobic and your phospholipid is also hydrophobic. So hydrophobic, it will be facing and the center will be having your hydrophilic. Okay. Now, so let's discuss the structure over here. So it is having the 23 amino acid in the membrane spanning helix. So 23 amino acids membrane spanning means they are talking only about this portion of 23 amino acid. Okay. The entire protein is large. Only the membrane spanning helices is having the 23 amino acids. Now, by binding negatively charged phospholipid head groups, the positively charged arginine and lysine residues near the cytosol of the helix help anchor glycophorin in the membrane. So what does it mean? See, after hydrophobic interaction, it also needs support from the cytosolic side, right? So it is the positively charged amino acids of the glycophorin and the negatively charged phosphate groups of the phospholipid, which is making the interactions. Okay. So what are those positively charged? It is arginine and lysine. Please remember, okay? So arginine, lysine are over here present, which is interacting with the negative charge of the phosphate group of the phospholipid. So all this positive negative is interacting in order to stabilize the structure of your glycophorin. Now, the extracellular domain is heavily glycosylated. So what does it mean? It means that it has got the sugar moiety present on the extracellular side. So whatever the green diamond cut dots you are seeing is actually your sugar moiety. So if I say that glycophorin is a glycoprotein, is it correct to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it is correct, because whenever you have got glycan region present attached to any protein, that protein can be called as glycoprotein. So it's correct. Now, to what amino acids the sugars are attached? It is your serine, threonine, and asparagine residues. So this is something you need to remember, because in future also whatever proteins we are we are going to talk about, it is always a serine, threonine, asparagine amino acids to which most of your sugars are actually attached. Okay, so just remember these amino acids. Now, molecular model of the transmembrane domain of dimeric glycophorin corresponding to residue 73 to 96. So this, they are talking about this. Okay, so this is the molecular model. Now, if you want to try studying the 3D structure of protein, there is something called PyMol. Have you heard of PyMol? It's actually a bioinformatics tool. So what you can do is, from Google, just put PyMol and download. Okay, so both, for if you have Apple or if you have Windows, just download and install. So it is free for 30 days and it is for educational purpose only. So no charges will be there. So what you have to do is go to PyMol and upload glycophorin structure. Now from where you will get the glycophorin structure? There's something called PDB, Protein Data Bank. Okay, now when you open Protein Data Bank, just enter glycophorin. There will be some code, 4-letter code will be there, some number or some alphabets will be there of glycophorin. Just download one of those, then open PyMol and upload this. Then you can study the 3D structure of protein. Now when you open it, you can actually rotate the protein structure, you can actually zoom it, you can single amino acid also you can label and study. You can also understand how exactly the structure looks like, and you know which amino acid is interacting with the another one. So all those you can study with the help of the PyMol. Okay, so just try once and let me know whether you were able to do or not. Okay. Okay. So, in contrast, the carbonyl and the imino groups taking part in the formation of backbone peptide bonds through hydrogen bonding are in the interior of the helix. So, what they are saying is that, see, if this is your phospholipid layer and glycophorin is having two polypeptide genes, right? So, what they are saying is, this portion of your alpha helices and this also is having your hydrophobic amino acid. Okay, so facing the hydrophobic portion of the phospholipids, whereas this portion is having your carbonyl and imino group through which they can make the hydrogen bonds. So it means what? Over here it is the center, the interior of this is going to be your hydrophilic. Are you able to imagine the structure? Huh? Just let me know, okay? if any doubts are there. Okay, so this is how your structure is there. Now, this is another example. So till now we were talking about the glycophorin. Now this is about the bacteriorhodopsin. So this is about the bacteriorhodopsin. So where do you find bacteriorhodopsin? Of course, in the bacteria you see, right? Now what is the function over here? It functions as a photoreceptor in certain bacteria. Okay. Now we have got the mitochondria, which will give us the ATP as the energy source. Whereas in the case of bacteria, they make use of light and then convert into the ATP. Okay. So once we start with the membrane solute, there we'll talk about the bacteriorhodopsin and how exactly it is actually transferring or converting light into the energy source. So how many helices are there if you count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So there are 7 hydrophobic helices in bacteriorhodopsin and a retinal molecule covalently attached to the helix which absorbs the light. So where is it? Over here. So if you go to the PyMol again and upload the structure of the bacterial rhodopsin, you can see that this retinal structure, okay? So either it will be in cis or trans. So these are the two forms we know of any hydrophobic molecule, right? So once what happens, light falls on this, the cis form of retinal gets converted to trans, and during which it allows the passage of the ions to pass through. And when this electrochemical gradient is formed, it helps in the formation of ATP. Okay, this is just the overview. In detail, we will be doing once we start the membrane solute. So what you need to understand is that bacteriorhodopsin, it has got these 7 hydrophobic helices, and you don't need to remember each protein and how many membrane helices are there. Whenever they ask a question, they themselves will give you the answer. Like they will mention that these proteins are having these many helices are there. Okay. Now from this, I just remember one question. Let me just ask you over here itself. There's something called hydropathy plot. Have you heard of this? Or KD plot? Any idea? Have you heard of this plot?
No, ma'am.
No, it's okay. So what this plot does is that you will have this kind of plot will be there. Okay, this is 0. Now, if you see a graph, something like this. Okay, suppose you see this. Now in the hydropathy plot, above this side tells you about the hydrophobic co-residues. Okay, so how many spans are possible? And here it talks about the hydrophilicity of the protein. So if I say that this is the graph given and I'm asking how many alpha helices are present, so what should be the answer? 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so are you getting the point? So whenever you draw,
No, ma'am.
okay, let's take this bacteriorhodopsin as the example. Now in the hydropathy plot itself, this is 0. This will tell you the hydrophobic core, this portion, okay, hydrophobic, and this will tell you hydrophilic nature of your protein. Now, if the plot is something like this, okay, so how many are there? The peaks are there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. This is small, so I'm not considering this. So how many are there? 7. And we know that in bacteriorhodopsin also 7 alpha helices are there. Okay, so it means that whenever any protein is drawn on the hydropathy plot, this is the first amino acid till last amino acid. Okay, so in between it will give you the regions which is going to form the alpha helices in the transmembrane regions. Now it is clear. If suppose I had only this much, so I can say that only 2 alpha helices which are present in the hydrophobic core is present. It means that in a protein 1, 2, that's all. Now it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is important. Okay. So sometimes what they give is the figure they will give you, the hydropathy plot of certain proteins they will give you, and they will ask you what is the total number of transmembrane alpha helices or transmembrane spanning proteins are there. Okay. So only that question will come. So you just need to count the upper portion, that is the hydrophobic portions. So suppose 4 peaks are there, so it means 4 helices are there. Okay. Okay. Now, so about the anchoring of plasma membrane proteins to the bilayer covalently linked hydrocarbons. So these are the different types of the proteins. So what we are discussing over here is type of peripheral proteins which are bound to the lipids. Remember? So we were talking about the integral proteins and lipid anchor proteins and the peripheral proteins. So these are the examples of lipid anchored proteins. So first example is we have got the GPI, SRC and RAB proteins. Okay. Now first let's talk about the SRC proteins. So among this, which one is the SRC? Your A. This one is your SRC proteins. Now where do you see this SRC and RAB proteins? All are coming in your cell signaling. Okay. So when we are going to study about the JAK-STAT pathway or different kinase pathways there, right? All those pathways, when we are going to talk about all these SRC, RAB, RAF, RAS proteins, all the GPCR associated proteins we are going to study. Now before that, we should know what is SRC proteins. Now, so this comes for your CSIR part B portion. Okay, so you need to remember this. So your SRC protein is there and it is attached to your lipids. Okay, now how it is attached? It is attached to the N-terminal glycine residue of the polypeptide. So which lipids are present? Either it is the myristate or the palmitate. Can you remember? So either this portion is either the myristate C14 or it can be palmitate. Now what is the process? It is the acylation. So they are also called the acyl anchors. So the protein is attached at the N terminal of the glycine. Okay. Are you getting it? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So these are few things which you need to actually remember. There's nothing to understand, but you need to remember. Then we have got the cytosolic proteins, okay, RAS and RAP. This is again in your cell cycle, and this is the prenylation. So in the case of prenylation, actually over here the mistake is there. The glycine has to be here and cysteine has to be here. Okay, there's a printing mistake in the book. Okay, so what is happening in the case of cytosolic proteins, for example, RAS and RAP, you have got the cysteine residues to which it is attached. Now, what are the lipids over here? The farnesyl and the geranyl. Okay, here there it was your palmitate and myristate. In the case of RAS and RAP, it is your farnesyl and geranyl. Your lipids, okay, both of which are unsaturated. If you remember this much also, it is more than enough. Then last one is GPI. So among all the lipid anchor proteins, your GPI anchor plays the important role. So GPI stands for glycosyl phosphatidyl inositol. So the phosphatidyl inositol part, this one. This is the portion, okay? So it anchors 2 lipids. Can you see over here? There are 2 lipids are there. Till now, it was only single lipids, but in the case of GPI, it is having the 2 lipids. You can see 2 lipids are there. Now, what lipids are now? Then what happens? These lipids can vary also. Now, PE is actually helping in the anchoring of the protein. So you have got over here. So this is your phospholipids over here. Then you have got the sugar moiety, and then we have got the PE. Now to PE, your protein is attached. Now to which terminal? C terminal it is attached. Now, in this case, if you treat with phospholipase C, remember we have already discussed about the phospholipase C, that it cleaves the phosphate glycerol bond. Remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
different types are there. This is one example where if the phospholipase C cleaves the phosphoglycerol bond, it releases GPI anchored proteins such as Thi1 and the PLAP, that is your placental alkaline phosphatase from the cell surface. Okay, so this one is important to be remembered. Now, till now, we were talking about the alpha helices, which are actually helping in the multiple membrane spanning, right? So, as I mentioned once, that porins are the exceptions which actually forms the beta strands barrels. So, instead of forming the alpha helices, sorry, they are forming the barrels. Now, where do you find the porins? They are found in the outer membrane of gram-negative bacteria such as E. coli and also on the mitochondrial chloroplast. Now remember that porins in the case of gram-negative bacteria are responsible for actually making them the multi-drug resistant also. Okay, this is also one of the reasons. So what is happening is that whenever you add certain kinds of antibiotics, with the help of these porins, they are able to efflux out or pump out. Now, the outer membrane protects an intestinal bacterium from harmful agents like antibiotics, bile salts, but permits the uptake and disposal of small hydrophilic molecules, including the nutrients and waste products. So, what they're saying is that on the membrane, if you have got the beta barrels over here, so something like this, they are made up of. So, it's like, a hollow cylindrical kind of structure it is. So what is happening? So inside the interior of this barrel is going to be hydrophilic in nature. So it will allow the movement of the nutrients and the waste products from the bacteria. Okay.
Ma'am, please repeat this.
So see the
Ma'am,
structure over
first
here.
point.
What?
Ma'am, please repeat the first. Ma'am, first point repeat.
Okay, this one. So
Yes,
it
ma'am.
is found in the gram-negative bacteria. So we know gram-negative bacteria, example is E. coli, right? So we know that there are certain times what happens is these E. coli are the multi-drug resistant strains are there. Correct. Now suppose you get infected with multi-drug resistant strain of E. coli and you add antibiotics. So whenever we get certain kind of infection, either if it is, see, if you get wound, if it is on the surface of your skin, we apply certain lotion or cream or something, again, which is antibiotics. For example, your soframycin. Right. Now, if it is internal, like maybe in the gut or your stomach, poisoning is there. So you have got the antibiotics over there. What you do is you take the antibiotics, you eat the antibiotics, it get dissolved, and wherever the bacteria are there, it actually enters their body. Okay. So it will enter their body. Now, what multi-drug strain E. coli does is that it will process the antibiotic and it will pump out. So what is happening then? So this antibiotics is not having any effect on the E. coli. It is not able to kill the E. coli. It is like something you have taken inside and just vomited out. Okay. Now, since it is not inside the E. coli's body, so it is not going to get killed and hence the infection spreads. Now it is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this is what I was talking about, this porins. So you can see that over here, it is the beta sheets and loop structure is there and there is no alpha helices. Okay. So it is made up of trimers. It means what? There are 3 subunits which are coming together and forming the porins. Now in each subunit, 16 strands form the barrel-shaped structure with a pore in the center. So what does it mean? So total how many barrel-shaped structures are there? There are 3 subunits and each subunit has got the 16 strands. So total 3 into 16. Okay. So they form a hollow cylindrical structure on the surface outer membrane of the E. coli or mitochondria or chloroplast. Now, a porin has a hydrophilic inside and hydrophobic exterior. In this sense, porins are inside out. What does it mean? Again, it is similar to your previously discussed. So as I mentioned, see, this is your plasma membrane. Okay. Now let us say that this is your porin. So this portion is going to be your hydrophobic, correct? And then inside one is going to be your hydrophilic. Now, in a porine monomer, the outward facing side groups on each of the strands are hydrophobic and form a non-polar ribbon-like band that encircles the outside of the barrel. Okay. Now, what do you see over here attached is the, can you tell me what are these? The circles one, they're nothing but your, yes, any guesses? Yes, Mahima, Ringi, any guesses? What are those? These ones. So these are your actually hydrophobic amino acids. Okay. So that's why I told just go
Yes, ma'am. What?
once. Hydrophobic amino acids.
Hello?
Hydrophobic amino acids. Am I audible?
Ma'am, your voice is not clear. No, ma'am.
So these are your hydrophobic amino acids. Okay. So that's why I said just go once, try with the pi mole to study the structure. So it becomes very easy to understand. Yes. So I would like to stop here and we will continue in the next session. So now I can have the doubts.